Hi, everybody. Okay, so this will be our kind of first substantive um, uh, lecture on Plato, right, and his theory of the forms. So last time, recall that we looked at mugs, right? We asked the question, okay, we looked at three different mugs. How is it that each of the mugs is a mug, right? They're all so different. They're different colors, different shapes, different sizes, all these sorts of things. So, what makes them all mugs, right? So, and Plato's going to say that there's an eternal mug or an immutable idea of mugness that all of these individual mugs participate in their own varying ways. So, um, the author of our book, the Gardner text, talks a lot about the relationship between the mutable or and the immutable, right? Or that which flows and that which is not changing. And so we talked a little bit last time about how everything that exists is a reflection or a shadow of some kind of ideal form. So, for example, the mug is a mere shadow or a mere reflection of the ideal mug, right? So the idea there being that it is a mug, but it's not the perfect mug. It's not the ideal mug. Um, and so the way that form works is that everything reflects a perfect form of that thing, right? So the perfect calculator, the perfect table. Okay, and hence all tables, all mugs, all calculators participate in that eternal, immutable form of the thing to some varying degree. So, when objects cease to be their form, their participation in the ideal form is lost, right? So, imagine that I have a mug and I throw it against the wall, right? And it smashes into a million pieces. We're not going to say that those pieces, right? Suppose I sweep them all up and have a dustpan full of like mug pieces. We're not going to say that that thing's a mug anymore, right? Uh, it's a broken mug. It's a bunch of individual pieces, right? So the idea there is that when something is destroyed, when it loses its form, it ceases to participate in this ideal form, right? Um, and so Plato has a solution to the one and the many, right? Is that the many dwarf or are subordinate to the one, right? The perfect mug accounts for the mini mugs, right? So it's not like he's giving like an overall account of what everything's made out of, right? Rather, he's trying to explain particular forms or the forms of particular objects in terms of larger ideal forms that are immaterial that we conceive of in our mind. Okay, so Plato also talks about the form of the good, the form of the true, the form of the beautiful, and even though it's not referred to in our text, the form of the one. So, what the heck does that mean? So, kind of like we talked about with the mug, right? So, there's an ideal mug. There's also an ideal form of good. There's an ideal form of true and beautiful and oneness, right? So, oneness there is understood as like existence. Something is unified to some degree, right? So, my phone is like the parts of the phone are unified such that it participates in oneness to some degree. Whereas if my phone were disassembled in like a bunch of different pieces, it like would lack oneness. So oneness has to do with the putting together of the parts of the thing. Okay. So um so Plato wants to say that all things that exist, in addition to participating in their own forms, right? So the form of the mug, right? The mug also participates in the form of the good, the form of the true, the form of the beautiful, and the form of the one, right? So everything that exists participates in some varying degree in each of these forms as well, right? So, um, so This is where he gets his philosophical doctrine called the unity of the Transcendentals. So everything that exists has some degree of goodness, truth, beauty, and oneness. Okay, so things like rocks, inanimate objects, have like some lower degree of these things, right? And so it's like a hierarchy here. So bacteria, things that like lack reason, things that have like really small bodies, right? All of these things have some lower form or lower degree of goodness, truth, beauty, and oneness, but higher than a rock, right? Because they like reproduce and stuff. And then like a plant, something that's composed out of multiple cells, isn't just a single cell, but still doesn't, it can't move, it's not sentient. These have a greater degree of goodness, beauty, truth, and oneness. And then we have small animals, large animals, and then of course human beings have the highest degree among physical things of goodness, truth, beauty, and oneness, right? So we participate in virtue of having minds like ours, having reason, being able to solve complex problems, right? In virtue of all of these things, we have some greater degree of these things than bacteria and horses and staplers and such, right? So, um, so that's his account of the doctrine of the Transcendentals. And so, what we're going to see is a little bit later in the class, we're going to look at Thomas Aquinas and evil, right? So, Aquinas is going to talk about evil as a kind of privation of a thing, right? And so he's going to borrow this doctrine of the transcendentals from Plato, and he's going to say that look, evil is the privated version of a given thing, right? So if I say harm myself or cut off an arm or something, I have to some degree lowered the degree of goodness, truth, beauty, and oneness of myself, right? Um, so I don't have as much oneness because I'm in two pieces, right? So that's the idea. Um, but Aquinas is going to say that the evil doesn't actually have a being; it's not an actual substance. Rather, it's just the privation. It's a parasitic privation on other things. So anyway, so we're going to see this doctrine a little bit later in the course, and it's going to be important. So be sure if you have any questions about what this is, if you have any questions about how the forms work, go ahead and send me an email, reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you about this stuff. It's all very confusing. I know I've been confused about this stuff before. So anyway, talk to me and let me know if I can resolve any issues for you.